Hey everybody, Robbie with Robbie's Reptiles. Today I wanted to go ahead and talk to you guys about, I think, are some of the most underrated morphs in today's market, and I think that they deserve a lot more attention than they get. So let's go ahead and talk about it. First things first, not a lily white, soft scale. This is a soft scale lily white that I picked up from Port Geckos. There's a few things to unpack with this morph, so let's just start with the most obvious, which sometimes people can't tell the difference, is the scale structure. Now, I would say maybe I wouldn't necessarily say that they feel any softer. I mean, I've held plenty of geckos in my day and they all are very soft. That's the first thing that anyone ever says whenever I show them one of my geckos. Wow, I thought they would be really rough. I thought they'd be spiky. No, they're really soft. Super soft, however, I would say do feel slightly different, but really only someone that has experience with crested geckos will probably know the difference. The main thing that when it comes to soft scale and super softs, it isn't how it feels. It's the structure of the scales itself. So I'll put up here pictures comparing a normal crested gecko to a soft scale to a super soft, and you can see slight variations in the shape of the scales. Now, from my understanding from the little research that I've done through AC Reptiles article that he wrote about it, you know, he's been in the business for ever, probably since it was ever a thing, and he has a lot of geckos that he breeds, over 2,000 I think, and eventually he noticed one of them kind of looked weird. He kept it and he bred it, and he kept breeding. And eventually, you know, he got ones that now we know is super soft, and he was like, okay, these ones have a different look to them. So what I believe, and from what I've heard, is, honey, what's interesting about soft and super soft is that by changing the shape and structure of the scales on the crested gecko, you're actually changing the way that light is refracting through the scales. You know how you can see my skin right now and you can kind of see the light going through my ears? That's a little bit of light refraction going through a material that is slightly translucent. And it's the same thing that happens with their scales. So what's interesting with soft scale and super soft is you're changing the way that light is actually reflecting off of them. And from what I've seen, it looks like super soft and soft scale just has bigger gaps between the scales, if that makes any sense. I hope that photos will be able to demonstrate it and give it justice. Wow, this girl's being great on camera. Good job. Another cool byproduct is that you get crazy vibrant colors because you're changing the way that light is reflecting off these scales from this gene. You know, when you change the shape of something, you change the way that light will interact with it. And so that's what's really cool, is that I think that soft scale is something that now, since we have so many beautiful geckos out on the market, how are you going to be able to differentiate your stuff from other people's stuff? How are you going to give yourself a little bit more of that competitive edge on the market when it comes to selling? Is by adding soft scale and super softs to your line, because you're just going to add that extra 5% of vibrance, that extra 10% of vibrance and clarity. And it really is a beautiful thing, and I think that it's really underrated. Not a lot of people work with it. My absolute favorite part, though, about the soft scale gene and the super soft gene, honey, can you get your foot? I'm right here. A really awesome byproduct of having soft scale in your lineage is all of the geckos that I've seen that are soft scale, super soft, and even AC Reptiles has reported this, are all larger than your average gecko. This girl right here is 65 grams as a lily white. I've never seen a lily white more than 55 grams. She's 65 grams with this incredible of head structure. That is so hard to find in lily whites especially. Probably just AC's line with that specific thing happened to have a lot of big fatties in the line. All of the geckos that I've seen that are soft scale or super soft are all larger than your average gecko, at least in the 60s. And that alone is something that I would add to my line in a heartbeat, which I have, and I'm going to be adding it to all of my lines because I just want to make bigger, floppier geckos, like we all do. So that's the reason that this is the first on the list. I think that it is the #1 most underrated morph, is soft scale, super soft. Not only are you adding a little bit more vibrance, not only are you changing the structure and the placement of the scales, but you're essentially just guaranteeing that your geckos are going to be bigger, fatter, and healthier with better head structure. That's a win-win in every scenario for me. And second on our list is just going to be your average smaverage patternless crested gecko. This technically is a bicolor, but for all intents and purposes, let's just call it a patternless. Patternless is super useful to have for any breeder, not only just because if you do discover some sort of new morph, you would definitely want to have something clean to pair it to, just so that you can have a good base layer, so you can have something to work off of, a clean slate if you will. Patternless is really great because it can be implemented into almost any line that you have, whether it be extreme drippies, extreme harlequins, tigers, lily whites. And the point of having a patternless crested gecko like this is to change the base color of any of your lines at any year that you choose. If you have a really great lily white line, but they're black based, you really want to make some of those yellow lily whites, let's say. And that's a really rare combination, to have a really high pattern yellow lily white, but you've got a bunch of really nice high pattern lily whites, and you have a bunch of really nice patternless yellows. That's going to be a way that you get, out of one pairing, maybe only one of the babies will be exactly what you want, but now you have it. And you were only able to change the base color because you introduced a new patternless, clean, with no Dalmatian spots gecko to the line, and you were able to hatch out a baby that changed the base color but looks maybe more like the lily white parent. So that's the reason you have a patternless in your collection. I know plenty of people that make their full-time living off just breeding patternless because it's a tool in terms of keeping it in your collection for breeding. Every breeder should have a patternless of every color, I would say. One thing that I haven't seen anyone actually work with though is patternless lavenders. That would be really cool. And I'm not talking about just being a brown gecko and saying it's lavender because you just want to sound fancier. I'm talking about true, like, purple, translucent, you can see the guts behind their eyes type of lavender. Now that would be really interesting. So if anyone has that, I will buy it in a heartbeat. So anyway, that concludes. Everyone needs to have patternless geckos in their collection. They're very useful, especially for changing the base color of any of your other lines. And they're also just simplistic. And I think that, you keep it simple, stupid. Now, third on the list, for some reason, it's always had a soft spot for me, and that's tigers. Not a lot of people work with tigers. I know that people are attempting to make super tigers. This is a tiger that I got from Lux Exotics. She's a female that's yellow and sadly has red base color, but for the reasons that I'm going to be breeding her, her actual colors don't necessarily matter too much. But for the reasons that I'll be using her for breeding, her base color isn't going to matter too much. I think that tigers are a beautiful morph that not enough people work with. They are relatively inexpensive. I've only seen some go upwards of $500 for proven breeders, and they just look really cool. I mean, from what I can tell, the way that you tell a tiger from brindle, let's say, is the way that the tiger markings interact with their dorsal, which might be hard to describe really, so hopefully these videos and photos can do it justice. But having a tiger is just really nice, and it's pretty simple too. You just pair a really nice high marking tiger to another really nice high marking tiger, and then the goal from there is to improve head structure, improve size, things like that. I think it's a beautiful thing to work with, and not enough people do, especially if you have really nice contrast and you have really good, like, a black base color with a really vibrant harlequin marking or tiger color. I think that would be a great project, and I also plan on working with tigers more in the future. Right now I've been focusing so much on lily whites and monochrome, but tiger is something that I definitely want to have on the back burner for now. So anyway, that concludes today's video on my top 3 most underrated morphs in the industry. Next, I'll talk about my top 3 most, in my opinion, overrated morphs in the industry. Make sure to like, subscribe, all that YouTube mumbo jumbo. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.